moved his finger, how he went to his wives, how he kissed his wives, how he dressed, how he combed his hair. Now all of a sudden we can't find one hadith, not talk about fada'il of dhikr. Listen that carefully, not asking about virtues of dhikr, that's what trying to trap us with. We don't want fada'il, we want kayfiyah. We want to know this is what the Prophet Muhammad told us to do. Finish.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الحدي حدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, who was sent primarily to give the message of Tawheed, the belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and likewise to purify the people, to take them out of the realms of darknesses and bring them to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور, takes them out of darknesses to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus we find that Islam, ظاهرا وباطنا, the external factors of Islam, likewise the internal factors of Islam, have all been discussed and taught and highlighted by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the Quran mentions, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. We've sent down the dhikr upon you that you may explain it to mankind, that which has been sent down, and they may reflect and ponder over that. So we want to discuss the external factors of Islam and likewise the internal factors, because certain individuals or certain fractions of Muslims have begun to highlight or to teach people that that which is external is different from that which is the internal. And we all know that as common Muslims, that externally we adorn ourselves and try to be in emulation and imitation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the Quran mentions in Surah Al-Ahzab, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Indeed, for you to emulate and to copy the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a fine example for us Muslims, whoever believes in Allah and the last day. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Indeed, your character is so sublime, so manifest, so great, the character of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So the external factors that we adorn ourselves with, whether it be the garments and the dress that we find as the Quran mentions, يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد. O children of Adam, when you come to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, come to the masjid, خذوا زينتكم, take your best clothing, your best attire, your best dress sense. Likewise you find Surah Al-Mudaththir, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, purify your clothing, your garments. That is part of Islam, to externally purify ourselves. Al-Nidafa nisful iman, cleanliness is half of iman, is part of iman. And likewise we find the internal factors as well. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. That day whereby the wealth and the children will not benefit the individual except for the individual who comes with a pure heart. There is both factors that Islam discusses, the internal and the external. That is Zahir and Batin. And as Muslims we know that there will always be any even enemies, external enemies towards Islam. As the Quran mentions, you'll find always individuals or groups or fractions who will have animosity and hatred towards Islam and towards the Muslims. And likewise you find the opposite factor. There will also be enemies from within. Whether that enemy becomes oneself, one's nafs, one's desires, one's lust, or it becomes to be people from within Islam, unfortunately, who try to break the message of Islam. It's something which has been documented right from the beginning of the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So there will be individuals, especially in the beginning of the period of the Medinan period. Because in Mecca, in the Meccan period, in those first 13 years, we find there was only Iman and Kufr. There was either Iman or there was disbelief. There was no third fraction, no third group. It was only when the Prophet Muhammad travelled to Medina, the final 10 years, that we find that a third group became apparent. That third group is a munafiqun, the hypocrites. Never existed before, who began to deceive individuals. Thus you find that the role of the hypocrite is externally to take the role of a Muslim. And hypocrites at that stage took everything to apparently display themselves as Muslims, but internally trying to work within to destroy Islam, to dismantle Islam, to create doubts, ill feelings, rancor, breaking away from the congregation and breaking away from the teachings of Islam. So this shouldn't surprise us that the discussion that we have today, whereby some of these individuals clearly show via their own actions and their own statements that there is no excuse that we can give them, that these are troublesome individuals who are trying to dismantle the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from within. And thus you'll find that they always quote this concept of ilmul zahir, the apparent knowledge, wa ilmul batin, the hidden knowledge. And for them, we know that, for us, we know as Ahl Sunnah, that the knowledge that the Ahl Sunnah take is based upon nusus, is based upon texts, based upon evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah. That is the foundation of Ahl Sunnah. That's what it means. People who follow Sunnah follow the text. As for these individuals, we find they classify themselves as people who take ilmul batin, who take the hidden knowledge, the hidden sciences. So we base our sciences upon authenticity. That's what Islam is based upon. But they try to highlight that the Islam that they are trying to follow is based upon these hidden factors. So that's when we narrate hadith to them, they turn around and they say that their findings are based upon al-dhawq, upon taste, al-kashf, al-ilham, discoveries, unveiling, inclinations that come down upon them is what these people claim, the knowledge that is given to them. And that's when we narrate a hadith, this is what they say about the Quranic sciences or the sciences, the prophetic traditions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَإِن سَمِعَ أَحَدْ يَرْوِي حَدِيث قَالُوا مَسَاكِينَ. If they hear anyone narrating hadith, they say this person is miskeen, it's a poor individual. أَخَذُوا حَدِيثَهُمْ مَيِّتْ عَنْ مَيِّتْ. They've taken their hadith, their prophetic tradition, from a dead person, from another dead person, from another dead person. وَأَخَذْنَا عِلْمَنَا عَنِ الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ حَدَّثَنِي قَلْبِي عَنْ رَبِّي. As for us, we've taken our knowledge from the ever-living, the eternal one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say that my heart, يعني حدثني قلبي عن ربي, my heart spoke to me from my Lord. So this is the foundation. As we're going to do, what is the foundation? Before we move into the other practices that we find, whether it be the dress sense, the food, the dhikr, whatever they do, go back and look at the foundation, the principles of what their belief is based upon. What is the essence of their belief? And then you can begin to understand the rest of the views that begin to stem. Because if the foundation is corrupt, then what comes out of the foundation will be nothing but corrupt. When the foundation is strong, is solid, as the Quran mentions, of the good belief, أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ تُؤْتِي أُكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا. The good tree has good roots, and every so often it gives out the beautiful fruits. Its branches go up into the heavens. As for that tree which is corrupt, has no foundation, مَا لَهَا مِنْ قَرَارٍ, has no foundation at all, quickly taken out of the ground. So the fruits that they give out are bitter fruits based upon their incorrect belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're not here to reject az-zuhud, abstinence, tazkiyah, staying away from this dunya, not to get too involved inside the dunya. That's not our intent. We want to go and see that what is this journey
what they claim to be tasawwuf. Tasawwuf never really existed as a word before, but just as we find it began to become prominent at a later stage. But how the ulama describe what is tasawwuf, what is Sufism that we find, which we are surrounded about. The most conventional view that we find the ulama mentioned is that the word originates from suf, suf meaning wool, based upon that some individuals, Ibn Taymiyyah mentioning from Muhammad ibn Sirin, that the people of Isa alayhi salam would wear woolen garments. Because there was zuhad, people who were abstaining from the world, etc. So some individuals began to copy them, began to emulate them, and began to wear such woolen garments as well. Secondly, we find the root word of Sufism, or the Sufi is the Arabic word, safa. Safa meaning purity. Thus you find Sufism becomes purity of the heart and soul. The third view that mentions that Sufism is based upon Ashabu Suffa or Ahlu Suffa, the companions of the veranda, the people who used to live outside the masjid of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those 300 or so in number. So this goes back to those individuals, poor individuals, destitute individuals, whatever charity would come, they would eat from it and live a simple life outside the masjid of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Bayruni goes to the view that this word, tasawwuf, is linked to the Greek word Sophia. Sophia means wisdom. So these were individuals who were full of wisdom. Thus we can see that the influence of Greek concept begin to develop inside these individuals. So people may think, well, maybe the beginning has a good intent. That's why many ulama have mentioned that its outward manifestation appears to be piety, but its inward reality forsakes the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So externally it seems pious, but you find that internally it begins to corrupt away from the teachings. The most absolute, pure, if the word is correct, Sufi that there was, the Sufi master was none other than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he advised those individuals who began to become harsh upon themselves. There's three individuals we find of deciding to pray all night, of deciding to fast every single day, and deciding to stay away from women. What did he advise them? He said, indeed, when he heard about this, indeed I pray and I break my prayer and I rest. Indeed I fast and I break my fast. Indeed I marry and I have relationship with women. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever turns away from my sunnah has got nothing to do with me. No one can ever claim to be a better zahid, a better absolute individual than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus you find the whole concept of what you find the coming of the Khawarij that we find, the essence of it, we go and read the whole tariq, was a man, Dhul Khuwaysara, who said to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, be just. And that angered the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, if I don't be just, who will be just? That he is the most God-fearing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that this led this extreme view. That's why you read all of the traits of the Khawarij that you find, that their foreheads with signs of prostration, of devotion, reading the Quran, etc. So these are not symbols in Islam. And a person sees that a person is a zahid, is abstinent from the dunya, or a person doesn't eat much, or lives away from everyone, is aloof, or lives a simple life. That's not the criteria that we judge by. The criteria of the Muslim is based upon the text, based upon the evidences of the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's what we find, especially in the land of Basra, that you find many zuhad that came before, like Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, as we find, well known, other great ulama that ulama have collected that existed there. Many of the companions were known to live an abstinent life, to stay from this dunya. This doesn't become a hujjah, an evidence that this is a tariqah or a path which is allowed. Because especially that we find, it wasn't until at a later time in the Middle East in the 8th century, and then further on you find in the 10th century, that you find the Sufi literature and manuals begin to become prominent. And thus you find that various principles are developed, whether it be inside the Al-Aqidah, or about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that which is classified as Wahdatul Adyan, the coming together of all of the religions, or Al-Awliya wal-Karamat, or the saints and the miracles that are given to them. As for Aqidah, that we find, that you find the infusion of Greek philosophies. We mention Greek logic, Hinduism, Buddhism that we find, and likewise Christianity, because they thought that Christianity is a life, the monks living a life of abstinence. As you find that the monks even today, the religion of Catholicism, for them, many actions are haram. It's haram. That's why it leads to absurdities. It leads to corruption. It leads to filth. You can all understand what I'm referring to. If a man stays from that lifestyle, Islam isn't like that. Islam doesn't go to one extreme or to the other extreme. Islam follows the middle path. That this is a path that a Muslim needs to follow to become successful. That's the Quran mentions. That this rahbaniyah, ibtada'uha, this rahbaniyah, this monasticism of staying aloof from society, ibtada'uha. The Christians invented this. This is an innovation. And that some Muslims felt that the only way that we can come to that high level of spirituality and devotion is to follow the same path of creating some form of spirituality, of monasticism, staying away from the people, living not in the monastery here, but living in the masjid, or living in a special environment, or living in the cave, whatever it may be, and we can become pure and spiritual in the individuals. And then you find from this what begins to take place, this infusion of philosophy and the deviant sects, whether it be the Karamiyya, Al-Batiniyya. You read the whole history of these groups, you find all these groups begin to filter into the Sufi belief. You find amongst their belief what is known as Wahdatul Wujud. Wahdatul Wujud is basically pantheism, whereby you find that deity dwells in human souls, or that the deity is incarnate in humanity, that everything is just a reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You become infused with the Creator. You find anna kulla mawjood huwa Allah. Everything living in front of you is part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's taken from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hulul, yani dhat Allahi aw sifatihi fil makhluqeen. That a part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes into the actual creation. This is part of their creed, part of their aqa'id. You come to certain spiritual devotions that you will eventually come one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Arabi, who's classified as Shaykh al-Akbar. The greatest Shaykh for them is Ibn Arabi, who lived from the year 560 to the year 638 of the Islamic calendar. Also known as Al-Arif Billah. Also known as Al-Qutb al-Akbar, the great pole, the great pivot, the most knowledgeable of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also known as Al-Ikbariya Al-Ahmar, the red sulfur. Likewise the sweet musk, and other titles they give to him. Such beautiful names you find for this individual. But what was his creed? What are the words that he uttered? Rather you find such foolish beliefs. Amongst his statements he writes lines of poetry, Rabbu haq wal abdu haq. Ya layta sha'ri man al-mukallaf. The Lord is true, the servant is true. May my hairs stand up on end, I don't know who is the one that is responsible. In qultu abd, if I said the servant, فَذَا قَرَبْ. If I said the servant is responsible, then the servant is actually the Lord. Or قُلْتُ رَبْ. If I said the Lord, أَنَّ يُكَلَّفْ. So how can the Lord be commanded? Meaning that you are Lord yourself. How can you command the Lord to do something? This is documented in his own works. If you look at Futuhat al-Makkiyah, the Meccan revelations, and Fusus al-Hikam, bezels of wisdom. It's clearly documented what his belief is. And that doesn't sound so strange enough that maybe وَأَنَّ مَنْ عَبَدُوا الْعِجْلِ مَا عَبَدُوا إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Those people who worship the calf, the cow in the story of Musa alayhi salam that we find, they were not worshipping the cow. They weren't worshipping the golden cow that was made out of gold. They were actually worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Harun rebuked them, Harun is being rebuked in the Quran because he prevented them, didn't stop them. He was stopping them from worshipping the cow. Should have allowed them to carry on worshipping the cow. That's why he's been rebuked, is their belief. Look how they make ta'weel of the Quran. Harun is rebuking them and saying that he's rebuking them in the wrong manner. He should have allowed them to carry on. That's why he's been told off in the Quran, because he did not allow the people to carry on worshipping the cow. لأن العجل في عقيدته الخبيثة مظهر من مظاهر الإله. Because according to his belief, the cow is symbolizing nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a symbol of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is within this cow. Likewise, we find أن فرعون أعلم بالله من موسى. Fir'aun is more knowledgeable than Musa. That's what he claims. وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. So when Fir'aun made this statement, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, all of us Ahl Sunnah know that this was clear kufr, clear rejection of belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He writes, Ibn Arabi, this proves, he's trying to highlight that he has become one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't understand his words. He is a great believer. On top of that you find, Inna Iblis huwa mu'min. Iblis is a believer as far as Ibn Arabi is concerned. Likewise you find, Qurratu aynin li walak. When you find that Musa alayhi salam is taken by Fir'aun, and Asiya says that he will be the coolness of the eyes for me and for you. So look at the tafsir that's made by Ibn Arabi. He says that the coolness of the eye, فَكَانَ قُرَّةَ عَيْنِ لِفِرْعَوْنَ بِالْإِيمَانِ الَّذِي أَعْطَاهُ اللَّهُ عِنْدَ الْغَرَقِ. The coolness of his eyes will be that when he drowns, he's drowning in a state of Iman. These are words which have been documented quite clearly, that none of these individuals can denounce and say these words don't exist and don't go back to Ibn Arabi. Likewise, you read other works of the tafsir that you find that which they classify as tafsir bil ishara, which ulama have discussed, but they are principles based upon tafsir bil ishara, as Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah highlights, that the meaning is not stretched away, it's not taken away from the essence of the Quran, and it's not bringing in something that doesn't exist. So you find that throughout their works they tend to make these ta'wilat, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ يعني تسبيحهم. As the Quran mentioned, you cannot understand their praise. So they try to highlight, you can't understand the praises of these individuals. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the plants, the trees, the animals, whatever it may be. The creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't understand how they praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they try to highlight, you can't understand the way that these mystical individuals are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, فَخْلَعْنَا عَلَيْكَ, take off your two shoes. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Musa alayhi salam when he came to the Mount Tur, remove your shoes. The commandment that was given to Musa alayhi salam. They make ta'wil that this means, يعني إخلع دنياك وآخرتك, get rid of this dunya and the hereafter. Get rid of the two shoes, يعني fight your soul, your nafs, your heart, your desires, fight them. What relationship does it have, taking off your two shoes, meaning to get rid of this dunya and work towards the akhirah? Likewise, you find وَإِن يَأْتُوكُمْ أُسَارًا, they come to you in a state of captives. Here they highlight, if they come to you غَرْقًا فِي الذُّنُوبِ, they come to you in a state of sinfulness. How these people come. Likewise, other ayat of the Quran, وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ بِالْجُنُوبِ, وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, the close neighbor means your heart. And you find the faraway neighbor means your nafs. Likewise, other ta'wilat of the Quran, فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِالْجُنُودِ قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُبْتَلِيكُمْ بِنَهْرٍ. You find when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he made Talut came with his army and said that we're going to test you with this river. And said to Talut and his army, فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْهُ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي. Whoever drinks from it is not going to be from the right group, from the right party. But whoever takes a small amount, a small handful of water, إِلَّا مَنْ اِخْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ فَشَرِبُ مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ. Whoever takes a small amount of water, then that is the right group. That is allowed for you to take. So it's quite clear what this example is giving. An army that's out, commanding has been given, don't drink from the water, only drink a small amount of the water. They make tafsir in this ayat of the Quran, the river is the world. That's what the whole of this world is like the parable of a river. Whoever drinks excessively will fail. Whoever drinks too much water will fail, takes too much of this dunya will fail. And whoever abandons it totally cannot survive. So all of us, obviously, we need water to survive. But the one who takes the bare minimum of what he needs is the one who will be successful. So this is the ta'wil. May sound good, what they're trying to make of these ayat inside the Quran, but the context is quite clear. Likewise, you find that the Quran begins with the basmala, with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, harf ba, and ends with ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. Ends with what? With a sin. So al-amr begins with ba, with sin, bas yakfi. The Quran yakfika. The Quran contains everything that's inside there. What relationship? Whether the Quran begins with a harf ba or ends with harf sin, what difference does it make? There's nothing specifically mentioned from a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that this is what the meaning that it entails. That's why you find Ibn Arabi in his famous tafsir, as we mentioned previously, tafsir al-Batin, the hidden tafsir. This tafsir is full of so much kufr and shirk and corruption and incorrect belief that even Al-Azhar University, that you find, normally has a lenient stance in allowing certain books to be published, etc., decreed a fatwa prohibiting the publication and the sale of this work. So this from an institute that's living today. Al-Azhar Sharif has banned the publication and the spreading of the tafsir al-Batin of Ibn Arabi. And we know Al-Azhar Sharif is known at times a very liberal stance at times about certain books that may be allowed. But they've even concluded that this book is full of so much kufr, so much shirk, so much corruption, decided to ban the printing and the publishing of this book. Other tafsir bil ishara, you find famous ulama, those you may want to go back and study them. You find tafsir al-Quran, al-Tustari, died in the year 283, Haqa'iq al-Tafsir, He died in the year 412. Likewise, Ash-Shirazi died in the year 666 of the Islamic calendar. These are famous books that they will go back and they will rely upon them. Likewise, you find that this form of tafsir, does it follow the methodology of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's the second stage. What is their belief regarding the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What do they believe in that differs from the belief of Ahl Sunnah? Yet they try to always taunt Ahl Sunnah. You classify him as only a bashar, as only a human being, as only a servant. We follow exactly what the Quran tells us. As the Quran mentioned, indeed revelation is given to me. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ, that indeed revelation is sent down upon me, that your Lord is one, and rather I'm only a human being. That's what the Quran tells us. Likewise, the Quran tells us He's Al-Abd. تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي نَزَّلَ فُرْقَانَ عَلَى عَبْدِهِ لِيَكُونَ لِلْعَالَمِينَ نَذِيرًا. Blessed be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sent the Furqan, the criterion, the Quran, on His servant. Likewise, in the beginning of Surah Al-Isra, سُبْحَانَ الَّذِي أَسْرَى بِعَبْدِهِ لَيْلًا مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ الْأَقْصَى. Blessed be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorified be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who took His servant. So these are the kalimat used by the Quran. So that doesn't mean we become derogatory towards the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're using the language of the Quran, as so we all believe as Ahl Sunnah, that there were great miraculous powers and skills given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Externally, yes, he was a human being, but internally his iman, his yaqeen, his certainty, his devotion, his mu'jizat that were given to him. We believe in all of them. We don't reject any one of them. That's why Imam al-Bayhaqi wrote a whole book, Dala'il al-Nubuwah, printed some 4 volumes talking about all of the miracles of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they just want to taunt people, saying as soon as you say the word bashar, they say you are now trying to show disrespect towards the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they have to play upon this, on people's emotion. These people don't really love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whereby the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam highlighted towards the end of his life, woe upon the Jews and the Christians. Do not extol me, do not praise me as what these people done to Isa ibn Maryam. Indeed, I am only the servant and messenger of Allah. That's what you should say. So these are amongst the final words of the Prophet Muhammad. Who are we to come along and say, no, we can now raise his rank to this. We can say he's still living, he is still eternal, he hears our supplication. We can make tawassul, we can go and intercede or use this as an intermediary to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus you find lawla ma khalaqtu afla. If it wasn't for you, we would have not created the heavens and the earth. It's the statements that they make. Likewise you find another statement that when Adam alayhi salam was inside the heavens, he looked at the Arsh of Rahman. He saw the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there he saw the name Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he mentioned the name. Many times you find even many masajid, people read these ahadith after Salat al-Asr, etc. They read these ahadith. And Allah said that, how do you know this name? Straight away first you find this is kufr. How can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, how do you know this name? I saw this name written on the Arsh. And if it wasn't for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I would have not have created the heavens and the earth. Ulama of hadith have mentioned this isn't even a hadith, this is mawdu', it's a fabrication. It's a lie, it's made up. That's why you find a hadith in Bukhari, Man kadaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa' maq'adahu minan nar. Whoever intentionally attributes a lie to me, let him take his seat in the hellfire. So these foolish individuals, you find this because of shaitan. So Ibn Jawzi wrote a whole book, Ibn Jawzi, Talbis Iblis, the deception of devil. For them they twist everything. They say, La nukadhib alayhi, nukadhib lahu. We don't lie upon him, we lie for him. They openly say this. Don't be deceived. Look what they do to the hadith. They admit the hadith is sahih inside Bukhari. Mutawatir. Is authentic. So the only way they can come out of the trap of the hadith, they say we don't lie upon him, we're lying for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What's the evidence inside the Quran as well? The Quran mentions, Ya ayyuhar rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik, wa illam taf'al fama ballaghta risalatahu. O messenger, convey to the people the message that's been given to you. If you don't do it, you have not fulfilled the trust. Then the end of the ayah mentions, seals their argument, seals them if these people try to insert something. How does the ayah end? Wallahu ya'simuka minan nas. Allah will protect you from mankind. We don't need to protect the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't need to lie for him. We don't need to protect him. We don't need to champion his cause. The Quran says, Wallahu ya'simuka minan nas. Allah will protect you from the whole of mankind. So who are we to come along and now to claim that I'm doing this for respect for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I'm doing this to dignify him, to give him more honor, to give him more dignity. And thus you find people, Al-Bawsari at the moment, written previously, wrote Al-Burda. You find this Burda, if you read through the Burda, nothing at kufr. And then you find وَعِنْدَكَ عِلْمَ اللَّوْحِ وَالْقَلَمِ, and you have the knowledge of the pen and the final day and the guarded tablet. Who is he attributing these lines of poetry to? He's attributing these lines of poetry to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And thus this corrupt belief regarding the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ leads on to the third principle of wahdatul adyan, the coming together, the fusion of all religions. That's where you find that this concept of humility, humbleness, don't say anything about anyone. Is that what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came with? And the Quran tells us, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Every message is sent to tell people to worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, stay from taghut. There's a difference between using harsh and incorrect words and between using أُدْعُ إِلَى السَّبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Call all to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with fair preaching and wisdom and good conduct. Debate with these people with these good words. Likewise the Quran mentions, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. You're the best people. Raised up, you order the good, you forbid the evil. Likewise you find in exactly the same surah that there should be a group of people who order the good and forbid the evil. وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ, and you believe in Allah. So what does it mean, وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ? That you stand there and allow people to highlight teachings of kufr and disbelief and say these are all paths. Every path of religion are all different paths that fuse together and come to the one path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is clear-cut kufr. That is clear-cut kufr. There's no concept of Abrahamic faiths. There's only one path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna deena inda Allahi al-Islam. The deen in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Islam. So listen to the words of what these individuals, they try to write, what they tend to highlight. You find Abu Sa'id al-Kharraz, he died in year 277, he mentions, I follow the religion of love. As we find the Sufis are based upon the whole of life just becomes love, al-hub. That's why even the al-kalima al-ishq never really existed inside the Arabic language. Ishq is something that they began to develop, these kalimat that we find. I follow the religion of love wherever it takes me, so all religion is my religion and belief. Abdul Karim al-Jili, fi kitabi al-Insan al-Kamil, he writes, so I surrender myself to whatever my desires surrender me to. How can I dispute with the judgment of one beloved? Sometimes you may see me bowing in the masjid, and other times I will be found worshipping in churches. If in the judgment of Sharia I am a sinner, yet with regard to the knowledge of reality I am obedient. I am, to me belongs sovereignty, in both worlds. These are words that are documented according to their sources, what they themselves mention. Like we find this leads on to the concept of awliya wal karamat, those people who come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have those special blessings bestowed upon them. Once again, as Ahl Sunnah, we do not denounce the blessings, as the Quran mentions. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. Who are the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون, who believe and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And taqwa, in a nutshell, is sticking to the halal, avoiding the haram. Living according to Sharia makes you a wali. That's how you become a wali. You don't break away from the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and think you come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة لا تبديل لكلمات الله ذلك والفوز العظيم. That is, bushra will be given to them inside this world. The glad tidings will be given to them inside this world. What are the glad tidings? Another similar verse inside the Quran. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. Who are these ayat talking about? Those who say our Lord is Allah, ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. What does it mean, istiqama? Many ulama mention, استقاموا على شريعة الله سبحانه وتعالى, على التوحيد, على القرآن, على السنة. That's what istiqama is. That they remain steadfast upon the Sharia, upon the Quran, upon the Sunnah, على الفرائض, upon the obligatory action, not to break away from them and to follow any methodology. Likewise, you find that the ahadith, they talk about the concept of coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ عَبْدِي إِلَيَّ بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُ عَلَيْهِ. The best way the believer comes close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala servant is via doing those obligatory actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed, and then to do the supererogatory and do the extra actions, till eventually that whatever the person looks at is only pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever the person touches is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not as they try to say that once again Allah comes incarnate within the individual. And he used to ask me, yani I would respond to him, he seek my protection. وَلَنِ اسْتَعَادَنِي لَعِيذَنَّهُ. If you seek my protection, I will protect this individual. Likewise, you find another hadith, مَنْ عَادَ لِي وَلِيًّا فَقَدْ آذَنْتُهُ بِالْمُحَارَبَةِ. Whoever harms one of my wali, one of my awliyas, I will declare war upon that individual. So we're all aware of these ahadith. But once again, they try to use these ahadith out of context to support their view. That look, the Qur'an's mentioning wali, the Qur'an's hadith mentioning, but not speaking any against them. And Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned these kharqul adat, this going against the norm of these miracles. And we know that in the time of the companions, Umar radiallahu anhu had so many different karamat that were given to him. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, hatta one of the companions mentioned in Bukhari, mentioned Khubayb ibn Adi, that the fruits were given to him. In winter we'd find certain fruits, in summer we'd find other fruits when they were out of season. So this existed of these individuals who were the true awliya. But Ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions an excellent point, he highlights that when people's iman begins to become weak, then they begin to look for these supernatural points. These supernatural points very rarely existed in the time of the companions, because their iman was firm. More and more people drift away from the companions, you find people want to see something supernatural. The most greatest supernatural, and if the word is correct, the miracle is what? Is the Qur'an. That's the miracle, the everlasting miracle that exists even today. So as you move away from the time of the companions, then these things begin to take place, that those people want to strengthen their iman. But he mentions that وجودها لا يضر المسلم ولا ينقص ذلك في مرتبته. This is present, doesn't harm the Muslim. And if it's not being present, it doesn't increase the iman of the individual. It doesn't affect the Muslim. The Muslim isn't so affected by looking at something which is supernatural, is what these people are trying to highlight. And thus you find that they try to focus upon this concept of awliya. You find al-qutub, al-awtad, al-arba, al-abdal, al-nujaba, al-nuqaba, that you find that these various stations. And eventually you find clear words of kufr, that you find the qutub, the pivots, the poles around the earth that keep the earth into place. So when a person dies, a wali dies, follows these stages, eventually becomes a qutub, becomes a pole somewhere in the earth and is protecting the earth. As you find, thus you find lata'if as-sitta. You find that these 6 subtleties that you find you have to study to become into the realms of the world of the Sufi, the nafs, the qalb, the ruh, the sir, the khafi, wa akhfa. All these various stations as well that you find you have to firstly follow the path of maqamat and halat, stages and ranks that you begin to develop, whether it be Sufi tariqas that you find following the certified sheikh, al-ahd wal-bay'ah, al-wird, certain form of adhkar, you have to perform al-khalwa, going in a state of solitude with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-kashf, that you find al-fana, annihilation, going one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and manifest and hidden knowledge becoming apparent upon you, al-aqtab, and finally you become a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-ilm fi sudur, la fi sutur. Knowledge, when we began with, for us, the principles of knowledge are what? A text. For them they say, al-ilm fi sudur, knowledge is in the chest. Your feelings and your perceptions that you get. It's not based upon writing. So obviously they want to make an incorrect understanding. Obviously for a Muslim, knowledge should be in one's heart, in one's mind, and likewise in the books and the scribes as well. But they're trying to highlight the real knowledge. That's what I'm saying. That's what they say about Ahlul Sunnah. You individuals have been taking external factors and been wasting your life, wasting your time. This is the real knowledge, the hidden knowledge that you have been missing upon. Either one of them wrote in line the poetry, إِذَا طَلَبُونِي بِعِلْمِ الْوَرَقِ. If they ask me for the knowledge of the paper, meaning written knowledge, بَرَّزْتُ عَلَيْهِمْ بِعِلْمِ الْخَرَقِ. Then I would expose them or come over them with the knowledge of these special supernatural powers. Now what are the miracles? Let us look at the miracles that they've documented about the saints that they claim that they believe in. You find Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani, famous Sufi, that you find in his book Al-Tabaqat al-Kubra or Tabaqat al-Awliya, mentions the miracles that are ascribed to these individuals. Then you can judge for yourself that who these individuals are, and what their beliefs are, and what they look up to. He mentions the miracles of Al-Ajmi. His gaze fell upon a dog. Other dogs took it as a leader. It became ill and it died. The dogs wept and visited its grave. Imagine if Al-Ajmi's gaze fell upon mankind, what would begin to happen then? Likewise, you find attributed to Abdul Qadir Jilani. He walked past a dog, and the dog got on the floor, put its paws up to the ground and said, "Ya Abdul Qadir Jilani, make dua, and I would say Ameen. Likewise, Sha'rani mentions his chief Ahmad al-Badawi has control over the universe from his grave. And you find on one occasion, Ahmad al-Badawi, his hand came out the grave and greeted him. It's been documented. This grave still exists in the Medina Tantan inside Egypt that you find. Still, people still gather there around the grave of Ahmad al-Badawi, who claimed to be a Sayyid. So you find that there's all types of other filth that cannot be mentioned in public, talking about certain issues that the sheikhs that they would begin to practice, and some of them giving the khutbah in a state of nudity in public. And obviously you can't understand why they're standing in a state of nudity. For you they seem to be in a state of nudity, doing filthy actions with animals, etc. They begin to take place, but externally it seems filth to you, but internally this is a state of purification that you find. And thus you find, ulama mentioned, إِذَا رَأَيْتَ الرَّجُلْ يَطِيرُ فِي الْهَوَىٰ. If you see a man flying in the sky, وَيَمْشِي عَلَى الْمَاءِ, and he's walking upon the water, وَأَمْرُهُ يُخَالِفُ الشَّرِيعَةِ, and his everyday practice goes against the sharia, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ شَيْطَانٌ. Know that this man is a devil. There is no way that a person can go against the text of the Quran and Sunnah and believe that this is a way of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's been documented on numerous occasions that they will even say that which you see visibly of what people may be dancing in front of us, kissing our feet, kissing our hands, whatever may be do, حتى you find يقبل الشيخ على فمه في فمه حتى في فمه, kissing the sheikh in his mouth. For you can't understand this, what this is, what this devotion, what this love is. You can't understand it. And even any individual would think that what type of actions are these? But this is the creed that you find, other blunders that you find, statements. Abu Yazid al-Bustami, you find, Subhani ma a'adama sha'ni. Glorified I am, how great I am. Not saying Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah azim. Subhani ma a'adama sha'ni, how great I am. Likewise you find, his student mentioned, seeing Al-Yazid is better than seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise he mentioned, Khudna bahran, we entered the ocean, waqaf al-anbiya bisahilihi. And as for the Anbiya, they just stopped at the edge of the ocean. They stopped at the brink of the ocean. As for us, we've gone into the ocean. Bima'na, meaning that we are more knowledgeable than even the Anbiya. Likewise, you find Al-Farid, Talmid Ibn Arabi, the student of Ibn Arabi that we find, Sultan Al-Ashiqeen, the Sultan, the leader of the lovers, wrote a whole poem, Qasidatul Ta'iyya, wrote a whole poetry, lines of, but they're good, that's what they're good for, writing lines of poetry, of kufr, and shirk, and then trying to justify it. That's you find the most famous poet that they have, Jalaluddin al-Rumi, that you find, everything is saying for me, as we mentioned before, the masjid, the church, or the temple. You find many of his lines of poetry are translated even today. People think that he's a great Sufi saint, etc. Even you find Rumi cafes, etc. being opened now, but nothing but kufr and disbelief. And then it comes to a higher level of corruption. You come to Al-Hallaj, Al-Hussein Ibn Mansur al-Hallaj, who died in the year 309 on the Islamic calendar, the year 922 of the Christian calendar. He mentioned, I am the one who loves, and the one who is loved is me. We are two spirits who dwell in a single body. So when you see me, you see him. And when you see him, you see us both. He mentioned, Ana al-Haq, I am the truth. Ma fi jubbati illa Allah. In my clothing is nothing but Allah. Hatta in my turban is nothing but Allah. This filth and this corruption, Ana al-Haq. He made these words openly, that I am the truth. Challenge any Sufi to reject these words. They try to say you've made them up. It's documented in his own books, Fusus al-Hikam, bezels of wisdom. All these kufriyat, all these words have been documented by his own writing, then supported by his students. Then you find ta'alikat, then you find any points have been extracted from them, poetry is written about them, proving that these are the great saints and these are the great individuals. So thus you find, going even further, you find this book Al-Fusus al-Hikam, he mentions that I saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Sham, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me to take this book to the people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed himself subhanahu wa ta'ala to this individual, Al-Hallaj, and told him to take this book and present it to the people. Inna Iblis huwa inna Iblisa qudwatuhu. Iblis is his example. That's what he writes in that book. My example, my role model is Iblis. Wa shaykhuhu Fir'aun. And my shaykh, my teacher, is Fir'aun. So what do you think should be done to the individual who follows such views. And in the year 309 of the Islamic calendar, you find he was executed. That is what is done to this individual. People still to this day, these individuals champion his cause. You don't understand what he meant by Anal Haq. You don't understand. Well, the Khalif at that time understood what he meant, and that was the end of it. Rather, someone on the right, that he was a Zoroastrian, a fire worshipper, full of kufr and shirk, and he came in the disguise of Islam, as many of these individuals that they do, coming as we began in the disguise of Islam, to destroy Islam from within, and to attract the masses of crowds of people around them. Ibn al-Farid, that we find, and all else prayed to me, and my prayer was not to anyone but me in every rak'ah. So everyone is praying to me, and whilst I'm even praying myself, I'm only praying to my own self. And then he's also written a complete poem addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the feminine form. Likewise, find other comments, ilmuhu bihali yukhni an su'ali. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what my state is. There's no need for me to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No need. He knows. Finished. So this is what his life becomes for these individuals. Nothing but kufr and shirk. To dismantle the sharia and to stay away. That's what you find for them. A person who's eating leaves, who's living in the jungle, فَهُوَ صُوفي فَهُوَ زَاهِد فَهُوَ وَلِي min awliya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's a good person. He's close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I've noticed some of these individuals with my own eyes, seen many of them in this evil state, and they try to justify these are people who come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, you can read the works of Qushayri and Tijani as well. So maybe they try to argue this does not represent us. That's what they say. They say these individuals are extreme views that existed, just like you find any movement or whatever it may be. However, at the same time, they do not discredit them, nor do they question the material. Because obviously they've been taught right down from the grassroots, kun bayna yaday shaykh kal mayyit, be in front of the shaykh like a dead person is when the body is being washed. These are amongst the principles. Stay in front of the shaykh like a dead body. Like what you find, don't argue, so you may be you may split away. Like what you find, man qala shaykhihi lima la yuflih. Whoever asks the shaykh why or how, that person will never ever be successful. Man lam yakun lahu shaykh fa shaykhuhu ash-shaytan. Whoever doesn't have a shaykh, then his shaykh is none other than ash-shaytan. Likewise, you find adabul murid. Go and study the works of etiquettes of being a murid in front of the shaykh. La tusafir. Fair enough. Don't travel without the permission of the shaykh. Wala tatazawwaj illa bi'idnihi. Don't marry with his permission. Well, maybe the shaykh is one's father, etc. Maybe that could be possible. But then it goes a further level. وَحَرَّمَ عَلَى الْمَرِيدِينَ السُّؤَالِ. And they made it haram for any murid, any follower, to ask them questions. Because if you ask questions, then it may be exposed that your shaykh is jahil, your shaykh is ignorant, is a fool. So that's why it's amongst the principles that never ever ask. Never ever ask. Because if you ask, then the shaykh will be exposed about his foolishness. And thus you find that amongst them they try to justify what they're doing. That's why many of the sheikhs that they mention that the dhikr that they have, the wird that they have, that one of the sheikhs invited one of the Sufi sheikhs to come. And you know how they love their food and their dinner. He invited him and said, look, come to my house and have dinner. So he sent his two sons. So he said to his two sons that every time the sheikh turns to the right, say ahlan wa sahlan ya shaykhi. He turns to the left, say ahlan wa sahlan ya shaykhi. So do that to the sheikh. Take care of him, greet him in this manner. So they go to the sheikh's door. The Sufi sheikh who would meet the sheikh, ahlan wa sahlan shaykhi, how you are sheikh, welcome, come with us for dinner. So as they're walking, every time he turns to the right, the son goes ahlan wa sahlan shaykhi, turns to the left, he goes ahlan wa sahlan shaykhi, all throughout the journey. So obviously the Sufi sheikh is getting frustrated. What's going on here? When he knocks on the door, the sheikh opens the door, he says ahlan wa sahlan shaykhi. And he goes, you as well, non-stop. On this journey, turn to the right, your son saying this, turn to the left, he's saying this, now open door, you're saying it. He said, how about you all your life? Oh. You got frustrated with these words. All your life you've been doing this, and you've been disrespecting who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Finish. When did ever once the Prophet Muhammad say, who? They say it comes from La ilaha illallah, from there it becomes Allahu, then it becomes who, then it becomes who, then it becomes breathing through the nose. That's where it becomes panting. Go into dhikr and see how the lights are then dimmed, and then you find what begins to take place. Bring one hadith. Don't bring us hadith. The Prophet said, make dhikr sit down, count on your fingers, say La ilaha illallah, say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, say Subhanallah, say Allah. But no, give us the kayfiyah. Because if everything right down to the last dot, we've been told how the Prophet Muhammad urinated, how he walked, how he laughed, how he talked, how his beard moved in salah, how he moved his finger, how he went to his wives, how he kissed his wives, how he dressed, how he combed his hair. Now all of a sudden we can't find one hadith. We're not talking about fada'il or dhikr. Listen to that carefully. We're not asking about virtues of dhikr. That's what try to trap us with. We don't want fada'il. We want kayfiyah. We want to know this is what the Prophet Muhammad told us to do. Finish. End of story. You bring one hadith, then we join all your turuqat, whether it be Naqshbandiyya, Al-Tijaniyya, Al-Jishtiyya, Al-Qadiriyya, whatever it may be, whatever, all these groups that you find that don't want to enter too much in Shaytaniyya stuff. At the end of the day we find refer and compare it to what does the Quran tell us. فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ أَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. So if we differ amongst ourselves, as we began with, what is the criteria to judge? Is it a dhawq? Is it taste? Is it desires? Is it feelings? Is it perceptions? Is that the way that we judge? The Quran says, you differ amongst yourselves, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Refer it back to Allah. And today we find the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, refer it back to the messenger. If you truly do believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the last day. Likewise you find inside Surah Al-Imran, the 3rd chapter, verse 31, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. That is a criteria. You claim to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, follow me. Follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah will then love you. So you're searching for love, you're searching for devotion. You follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, you'll gain that love. And your sins will be pardoned and forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise, you find they try to hide behind famous individuals and say, look, well, Ibn Taymiyyah, he was a great Sufi. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he wrote his book, Madarij al-Salikin, Steps of the Travelers, talk so much about zuhud inside there. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Many of these ulama, famous ulama, they talked about tazkiyah, because we mentioned tazkiyah is part of Ahl Sunnah. But even these individuals, Imam Ghazali, Al-Ihya, Ulum al-Din, that we find, even many ulama made a strong critique of his works, and some of them even write that he then gave up the studying of Islamic knowledge and went into the path of spirituality. That's when he said, I've discovered the real knowledge. Likewise, find Imam al-Subki, likewise Imam al-Nawawi, they tried to use these extractions, say, look, these were great ulama, great fuqaha, who at the same time had spirituality within them. These great fuqaha, these great ulama, if they even made a statement, even firstly, if it is true about them, if it is true, and it is against the Quran and Sunnah, then what do? We reject it. Our faith is not based upon personalities. So if an alim comes along, and that's his one slip, that's his slight mistake, because we know that most of these ulama, these great ulama, their service to Islam is great. A great service that they've done. The Turath, the heritage left behind, is immense. What they've left behind, their works of tafsir, of ahadith. So even if it happened, let's say for argument's sake, it's true, then this one occasion, Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned something. Because we know that sometimes he talks about that when he was inside prison, what did he say? That my heart dances. Ah, look, there. He's a Sufi. My heart dances, because if this is what the people of Jannah are facing, then this must be tranquility. So just extract that one part. Read the rest of his works, whereby he drills the concept of Sufism throughout his writing in his fatwa. Drills them all the way through, but this one word, my heart dances. So there you go. Ibn Taymiyyah was a great big Sufi. But then Ibn Taymiyyah, you could take something else. He's a great big Mufassir, great big Mujahid, he's a great big this. Everything can be extracted from his words. But what was the main subject? Whereby he destroyed the arguments of what they believed in. And that's right, he had a great deep life of spirituality. ماذا يفعل أعدائي بي أنا جنتي بستاني في صدري. What can my enemies do to me? My paradise is right here inside my heart. So he lived a life of deep spirituality. Many of the ulama did. But they did not try to waver away from the path of the Quran and Sunnah. Like Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, we mentioned many of his books. In Miftahul Jannah, in the Keys to Paradise, you find the disease and the cure. Like with other many books that he wrote, many famous books of tazkiyah. That's why they classified him as Tabibul Qalb. The doctor of the heart is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. His books, he talked about tazkiyah. But once again, if there happens to be words which go against the Quran and Sunnah, then they are to be rejected. So irrespective of who the personality is. As for today, what are the current practices? Do any of these, if we claim that they are Sufis, these individuals, do you ever find amongst them the external practice that exists today of singing, of dancing, of music, of free mixing, and even you find hashish is allowed for them, because externally you find even Arabis he wrote as well that wine is water, water is wine, so nothing really happens whichever of these substances that you take. They thrive on these. If you sat down and you listen to their words, if you listen to the words of kufr and dissected them, obviously it sounds sweet, it sounds nice, etc. But if you sat down and you began to decipher the words and began to study the words, you'd find that these words are nothing but kufr and shirk. And thus we find that these people are moving people away from the Quran. The essence, the life of the Muslim is based upon the Quran, the text of the Quran. For them, they say that you're ignorant if you begin to study the Quran. Don't read the Quran. Don't study the Quran. Don't read the tafsir of the Quran. Stay away from the Quran. Stay away from Islamic sciences. You don't need to study al-ulum. You don't need to develop the science of hadith, of Quran and fiqh, etc. Just you need to follow this path, and that is sufficient. Likewise, you find you want to destroy the right aqidah, the right belief. That is amongst the core elements, as we mentioned. Why infuse people with such beliefs? Why do we need to infuse people with such beliefs? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes one with the creation and everything around us is Allah, is a reflection of Allah. Is that what the Prophet Muhammad taught his people? Is that what he came to teach the people? So then what is the distinction between Christianity, Judaism and Islam? What is it? Islam, as we mentioned, is the Puritan belief. The Puritan belief of bringing people to worship and single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for worship and all alone. And likewise we find to follow the Prophet Muhammad is the best way to gain tazkiyah. If you read through the Quran and Sunnah, don't you find tazkiyah? Adhkar, ba'da salah, ad-du'a, qiyamul layl, al-hajj, wal-umrah, giving of wealth, lan tanalu birra hatta tunfiqu mimma tuhibbun. You're never going to attain piety, don't spend with the things that you love, living a simple life. All these etiquettes that we find is all the real spirituality that will give the person that level of spirituality following the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, al-ibadat. Why exercise ourselves? That's when you read through the works, you have to exercise yourself in these rituals, and then you come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What greater, to use the word ritual, but what greater ibadah can there be than putting your face down on the floor and submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in salah? That's why Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to talk to you, then read the Quran. And if you want to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then stand up in as-salah. Wa aqimi as-salata li dhikri. Establish the prayer for my dhikr, for the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the ibadat that we find, the rituals that laid out by the Prophet are ideal rituals. Now they want to come along and say, no, that's not enough. These rituals, we need to find even more better rituals. And that is something which is going against the teachings that were brought down by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these were just a few words we want to share about their belief and the etiquettes that we have. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all the tawfiq and ability to remain true to the steadfast teachings of the Quran and Sunnah, and to expose those individuals who go away from the blessed Quran and the Sunnah, to keep us and preserve us and keep us upon the truth until we return back and we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa aqulu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li jami'il muslimin wa astaghfiruhu huwal ghafurur rahim. Subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Barakallahu feekum.
Like many people today, they have this concept of kashf, like you mentioned. So how do you know whether it's because these things happen in the time of the Sahaba? How do you know these things aren't actually happening now with some of these people?
But asking that certainly form of revelation or form of inspiration came to Umar ibn Khattab. So how do you know these things don't happen today? Ulama have discussed that even today people may find this intuition or this feeling or some foresight, insight that they have. So in general, people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they don't really mention these points. As for to go around and to mention and to gain some extra blessing, whatever it may be, that's the first thing that we need to understand. So there will be people may be given different forms of karamat, of patience, of strength, of mental ability, whatever it may be. And likewise, you may find that certain things are inspired to them. So we're not negating that fact. But there's a path to gain that inspiration. If that path of inspiration is breaking away from the Quran and Sunnah, then that becomes something which is rejected. And we know that Umar ibn Khattab, that his inspiration was based upon following strictly to the Quran and Sunnah bestowed upon him. But many of these individuals that we find, they are only searching for these karamat. As you find they mention, Ibn Taymiyyah mentions about Imam al-Ghazali, a person, once came to him and said that I want wisdom to flow out of my mouth. So Imam Ghazali said to him that you become sincere for 40 days and you'll find wisdom will flow out of your mouth. After 40 days he came back to Imam Ghazali and said, you told me that after 40 days if I remain sincere, wisdom will flow out of my mouth. Wisdom doesn't just come out of your mouth or remain quiet for 40 days. Imam Ghazali, what they say to him, إِنَّمَا أَخْلَصْتَ يَنِي لِلْحِكْمَةِ, you became sincere for wisdom. وَمَا أَخْلَصْتَ لِلَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى, you did not become sincere for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So still a fine definition. You were sincere just to gain that wisdom. You wasn't sincere to gain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you automatically hikmah. Will become something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bestow upon the individual. But they are only searching for, if you have some miracle, if I pop out a bag of dates now out of my hand or whatever it may be, that shows that I must be a wali. A rabbit out of the brother's hat or something, that shows. Yeah? That's the science. That's not science. As Ahl Sunnah, we don't base our iman upon seeing these signs. And that's what the masses have become. But as we mentioned, our sign for us is the Quran. That is the everlasting miracle until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lift it. As for anything else, if it's done, the person has it, and the person, most awliya, try to conceal it. There's no need to mention it, what they may have been given, be bestowed upon them. But they want to show that as a point, that to prove to people that I am close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in essence, as you mentioned, to exploit people and whatever they want to gain from the masses. Wallahu a'lam.
Can you explain firasa, to say that the believer sees through another light other than...
Hey, barakallah. Firasa means insight. So say for example, any person may be dealing in hadith and basically excessive studying hadith, they have their foresight to be able, just like a money changer today, me and you may not be able to make a distinction, but that person may just look at the note and be able to read the note and say this is fake. Likewise, a person who's been studying and working with people may have the foresight that you see a person and you can see this person, this type of character, maybe mashallah, yourself, age of experience, you can see a young boy, you can see certain traits, and you can say, he's a good individual when somebody may come to offer a hand in marriage to your daughter or family members. So that's possible. So there's nothing wrong with that type of farasa. That's something which is acceptable in Islam, that a person is given that type of intuition, of understanding or skill to be able to recognize certain things. There's nothing wrong with that. Wallahu a'lam. Fine, brother. Follows Ibn Arabi and other Sufis claim that only the sheikhs can understand these statements. They tell us not to read the words because we will misinterpret them, consider them as kufr. What should our answer be to this? Like I said, the statements are quite clear. Even their own sheikhs, their own students, they carry on making that kufr. So then who's supposed to read the works then? So we can't read it, and only they can read it, so they can carry on keeping us in the dark. So the journey continues, isn't it? You can't read it, I can't read it. Only their special sheikhs can read it, and only they can make ta'wil. If they make ta'wil to say, interpretation, that this is something which is incorrect, then our case is closed. But they carry on building upon that kufr by saying such words you can't understand what they're saying. It's the clear Arabic language. The clear language used, somebody who spoke Arabic clearly. And an al-haqq, now how can we interpret that? What's the interpretation that we should be given for that? It doesn't mean what you think. That's why they have this concept, they have this special word, the word that they use, that this is something for you that seems words of kufr, but in the world of the Sufis, it's something different. And this type of deception is not allowed. Deception in Islam is allowed in the state of warfare or defending one's faith or being harmed. As for who's harming you, that you need to be deceptive towards the rest of the Muslims and say, look, you don't really understand these words of Ibn Arabi or Ibn al-Farid or Shayrazi or Sha'rani, all these words, we don't understand them. So what do we understand them? What are we supposed to do now? So you carry on writing kufr and infiltrating it with kufr, let it carry on inside the society. And our job, as we mentioned, is not to make a critique of a specific individual, meaning today. There's many people sincere. Our job is to highlight that the material that you're using, the material that your belief is based upon, is corrupt. Finish. End of story. So they want to take it as an emotional and attack upon them or whatever it may be. These are their words, these are their beliefs that they hold true to, and they never ever discredit Ibn Arabi. They never discredit him. They never discredit any of these individuals. That's what they do. They just try to make ta'wil and try to pretend that those are not their words. As we mentioned, these words are documented inside their own books. Wallahu a'lam. Go ahead, brother.
What's ta'wil?
Ta'wil, he's making, yu'awwilu shay, to change something, like tafsir, to explain something. So what happens, for example, if a verse means something, they make ta'wil, they reinterpret the verse that it could mean this. And ta'wil is based upon, you need language, the Quran, the Sunnah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they keep on reinterpreting things. So any reinterpretation that goes against the Quran and Sunnah is to be rejected. So if a Quranic ayah could be clear, like for example we mentioned, فَخْلَعْ نَعْلَيْكَ, take off your two shoes, the context is clear. Musa alayhi salam is going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him to take off his two shoes. So now they make ta'wil, reinterpreted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Musa alayhi salam, the take off your two shoes means get rid of the dunya and start working towards the akhirah. So this type of ta'wil, is it plausible? How does it fit into this ayah? If the ayah was talking about the akhirah, talking about something of such a nature, then Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah mentioned, then it becomes plausible. But here this is something ba'id, this is something far away, and try to bring it into the, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about tazkiyah of the nafs, etc. So that's what we mean by ta'wil, which they are well known for performing such action. I was approached by a sister who said that it is obligatory to perform salah but not to learn any Quran. Is it enough or fard ibadah to learn Quran? Learning of the Quran, خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه, best of you is he who learns the Quran and teaches it to other individuals. So the studying of the Quran is fard. It is an obligation, and if it's obligatory to pray, then how are you praying? You need to read the Quran in your prayer. So you need to learn the Quran. You need to pay equal attention in learning the Quran. That's why many ulama mention that ilm al-tajweed, basic elementary tajweed, is fardul ayn. It's an obligation upon every single Muslim to be able to read the Quran appropriately. It's an obligation, just like fardul ayn means just like we pray, we have to fast, we perform hajj, it becomes an obligation. So people should try to perfect the Quran to the best of their ability and try to learn whatever they can of the Quran, and likewise remain steadfast and obligatory upon the obligatory prayers as well. Allahu a'lam. Go ahead, brother.
When you give Tawbah to the, like especially the Sufi brothers, within ourselves there are two arguments. One, from the other side, like you can't keep exposing them, like their sheikhs or whatever the people. You need to, or some others say you need to give them knowledge. Even you give them knowledge, they say, okay, this means this means that. What is the best approach to like tackle them? Either expose their sheikhs or like tell them, look, this is your sheikh saying this is wrong and this is that.
And if we want to expose the sheikhs, then we could stay here all night and expose them. Do you understand? At the end of the day, we have enough experience of being with them on various occasions to expose what their real belief and their corruption is. That's not the intent. Our intent is not here and has never been, inshallah, to expose individuals. We just want to expose the truth. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Finish. Who wants to believe, let them believe. Who wants to commit kufr, let them commit kufr. All our task at Ahl Sunnah is to establish the hujjah. And tonight, that's all we intended to do, is not to blaspheme against them or to upset them, is to highlight what are the evidence of the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's it, that's all Muslim. A Muslim is not burdened that every time you debate with whoever it may be that you have to win the argument. That's another thing we need to understand. You understand the evidences, you understand it, that's it. They may come with various arguments and this and that, that's it, finish. We're not going to carry on wasting our time and our life and just keep on giving a rebuttal and refuting. There happens to be an opportunity, and that's as far as we go, and then we just carry on with infusing people with the correct belief of the Quran and the Sunnah, and inspiring people with the real spirituality that the Prophet used by the use of the Quran and the Sunnah. And if they come in our way, then we discuss with them. If not, then we just carry on what we have to do. Allah Ta'ala. Go ahead, brother.
Do we judge by what is apparent? Because some people, they say that you cannot be like judgmental in your decisions. They say that if a person has a beard, for example, it doesn't mean that he's better than a person who doesn't have one. So how do we judge? Do we judge by what's apparent?
Obviously we should be very careful. There's a fine line, as I'm sure that you probably know better than myself, never judge a book by its cover. So that is partially true. So obviously we need to give every Muslim the space and the time. We shouldn't become judgmental because he has a beard, he must be a good Muslim. You understand? Some people may just keep it out of this lazy, or just they're brought out as a habitual practice, isn't it? Some people have that, don't they? Or becomes the norm of the people that they do these practices. So people make a critique, you've got a beard, how can you do that? That's unfair as well. Just because he has a beard, he's still a human being. And likewise, if he doesn't have a beard, he's still a human being. He may have 99.9 excellent characteristics. That 0.01%, he doesn't have the beard in his face. Apart from that, he doesn't lie, doesn't steal, doesn't cheat, speaks well, he's humble, vigilant of their prayers, doing good deeds. So we try to work with one another, rub off one another. We can learn from him, from his points, and he can learn from us, and we can encourage one another, create the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, love for the Sunnah of the Prophet. That will bring us towards a good direction. As for us to become straight away judgmental, like he looks like this, she looks like this is dangerous. We try to remove that from our hearts, even though sometimes it's good it entices a person, but at the same time we should be very, very careful and try to look at possibly our own defects, that maybe externally we look good, but internally, as we mentioned, there is, as we began with, the heart is corrupt. Our love, our fear, our hope, our intentions, our reliance, that inside our heart, has that been refined? Our sickness, our sadness, our weeping, our joy, is the heart at that level? So we need to work, as we mentioned, the external and the internal. We help all of our brothers and benefit from all of them, inshallah. Go ahead, Sheikh. Tfaddal.
Some Sufis, they say Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made it nur, and they
Made what, sorry, Sheikh? Made
it
don't
nur.
often
Made that nur, okay, yeah.
They quote this ayah, and also they support that. Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam many times he prayed to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala that increase his nur.
That's right.
And they say if he wasn't a nur, so how he asked Allah to increase his nur? So what does he meant when he asked Allah Subhanahu wa Taala increase his nur?
Okay, barakallahu fiik. First we find that this ayah inside,
And
I think,
also another thing, when Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam died,
that's right.
and he was buried. Normally, when we bury the person, we say a dua, which is minha khalaqnakum wa fiha nu'idukum. Did Prophet Sahaba Kiram, when they were buried Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they read that? And if they did, what did the man read?
Okay, أولا that we find firstly about this ayah inside Surah Al-Ma'idah, many ulama tafasir that they mention that this, the word nur here, yudif or yarji' ila mada, goes back to what? The siyaq, the context of this ayat is talking about what? The Quran. So they say that nur goes back to the Quran. And there's a few ulama mention that the nur refers to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran mentioned, he is Sirajan Munira, he is the blazing star, the blazing sun, etc. The Quran mentioned them. So what do these ayat, what do they mean? He is Bashir wa Nadir, he is the warner giving glad tidings. So what's the context that we should Ahl Sunnah take it? The context is quite clear, that he is preaching the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people are attracted towards what he says. Also to believe that physically that he is nur from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that he has no shadow. Firstly, these ahadith about having no shadow, they are da'if or they are mawdu'at, they are fabricated. Secondly, even we established that the Prophet Muhammad had no shade. What does that mean? If he's walking, he had no shade. What does that do for us for Ahlul Sunnah today? What does that really mean? That the Prophet had no shade? Do you understand the point? What does it really mean that he had no shade? What are you trying to prove by that he had no shade? Well, they're trying to prove, as you mentioned the hadith about Adam alayhi salam, that the Prophet Muhammad is a rank, supernatural rank. And to take him to a higher level, when he is saying that don't commit khulu, don't extol me, don't praise me like the people done to Isa ibn Maryam. And they even use this mantiq. They even say to us logically, look, the Christians, they praise Jesus, we need to praise the Prophet Muhammad more than Jesus. We need to praise him more than Jesus to let the Christians know and let the Muslim Ummah know that we love the Prophet Muhammad. As for the funeral of the Prophet Muhammad, no companion could lead the Prophet Muhammad in the funeral prayer. That's why each companion came and done his own dua and went. As for to say that the Prophet Muhammad is equal to the awliya, that this is where we say this is blasphemy. The Prophet Muhammad is special. He is unique. You send salah upon him, it goes to him, the angels deliver it to him, goes back into his soul. That's what we believe. As for them, what they believe, that he becomes hadir and nadir, and he becomes present in our gathering. So he could come to, as we find shortly, Eid Miladun Nabi, Prophet will be coming here in Manchester, coming in Bradford, coming in Birmingham, coming in Sudan, coming everywhere. So how is he coming everywhere in every single location? Thus we find that one of the sheikhs, he highlighted in a famous lecture I've heard with my own ears, he said that the Prophet Muhammad came to him in a dream and said to him, Sheikh, that as long as I'm staying in Pakistan, you have to take care of me. Okay, this is recorded in a tape. He said that as long as I stay in Pakistan, you have to take care of me, you have to look after me. When the Quran says what? Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdi layla min al-masjid al-haram al-masjid al-aqsa. Allah took you from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa. You have to sort out my plane ticket, PIA, anyone wants to fly in PIA anyway, my plane ticket back to to Medina. Back there in Murtaza. In the tape. Clearly he mentions it. Then he had to release, this is the devil playing with the mind. He had to release another tape that you can't understand my dreams. Suppose we can't understand your dreams. Go ahead, brother.
It's just that, I mean, I know a couple of Sufi brothers and basically they always want to debate with you. You know, they always try telling you that they're correct. And recently, I was speaking to a brother who's a good friend, I've been trying to advise him. And he keeps making statements of that Allah is everywhere. And I said, well, you can't make this statement. In the Quran, Allah's made it clear. He's not in his creation.
That's right.
And he goes, you can't assign a place for Allah. You can't do anything. It doesn't suit Allah. I said, look, Allah knows everything through his actions.
That's right.
He goes, if he's not in his creation, then how does he come to the bottom of heaven? How do I explain this to him?
Hey, first we find that, and when people make this statement in general, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is everywhere, some people are ignorant and some people are also sincere. If you explain to them what you mean by Allah is everywhere, an average person would say, I don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is everywhere. I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears and sees everything that we're doing. So we just correct them that try and avoid saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi kulli makan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is everywhere. But then those individuals who have this in the aqidah, whether it be the Maturidi aqidah or the Ash'ari aqidah, you find that begins to stem away from the belief of Ahl Sunnah. For their belief is that when you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Quran says it, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, numerous places in the Quran. Ilayhi yas'adu kalimut tayyib, to him Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes the good word. All these ayat inside the Quran show that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as for kayfa istawa, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ascend the throne, how did it take place, is majhul, is unknown. كيف غير معروف, is not known to us. We just take the word Allah ظاهر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said استوى على العرش, finish, that's it. So like what even the Quran mentions, وهو معكم أينما كنتم والله بما تعملون بصير. وهو معكم أينما كنتم, he's with you wherever you are. But they mentioned والله بما تعملون بصير, Allah is watching over everything that you do. So when they make these ta'wilat, they're trying to negate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is all the concept of mantiq, of logic inside their books, that Allah is not in the creation, not outside the creation, not in the planet, not outside the planet, so etc. All this begins to take place. All yukharribul aql, it takes away the mind. Aqidat Ahl Sunnah is simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He is above His throne, that's it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends every last part of the night, كَمَا يَلِيقُ بِجَلَالِهِ, that which befits the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for kayf, as for how and when, that's not for Ahlul Sunnah to enter. These are all affairs of the unseen. We stop there. They are the ones that are making ta'wilat. They're the ones that begin to make these reinterpretations. That's what you find that they write about when Ibn Battuta, the famous traveller, he entered into Dimishq, into Syria. He said that I saw Ibn Taymiyyah. That's what they love to say. You Wahhabis, etc., like to use these words, derogatory words. They say Ibn Taymiyyah, a great Wahhabi. That's what you find in Sham. They used to burn his books. Have great disgust towards him. He said that when he was in the mimbar, he's giving the khutbah, he said that this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends on the throne, and he got down from the mimbar. That's what Ibn Battuta wrote inside his works. So they tried to come and present this to Ahl Sunnah. They look, Ibn Taymiyyah even mentioned this. You go back and you analyze it. Firstly, Ibn Battuta never ever met Ibn Taymiyyah. And when Ibn Battuta entered into Syria, Ibn Taymiyyah was where? In prison. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes them. So they try to make these khurafat, these ta'wilat, make these lies, these false claims, and say that this is what the creed of Ahl Sunnah is, etc. This is how you've gone deviant. And like I said, they spend most of the time trying to do this. You can even just spend maybe half a day, go through the evidences and refute them. So spend your time doing something else. It's not a big thing. You'll have the same old arguments coming again and again, trying to present it. And why don't you say to leave it that? If you want to, just like I said, spend half a day. And that's it. They can spend half of their life trying to prove their points. They won't be able to prove it, inshallah. Go ahead, brother.
Is singing and dancing permissible in a wedding using a duff, and if there's segregation on it?
And if firstly, singing and dancing is not for a man. As ulama fuqaha mentioned, that a man who sings and he dances question his manhood. Okay, so what we find today, boy bands and singing and this, that and the other, and nasheed that was done by Muslims at that time was where? In jihad. Digging the trench, La aisha illa aisha al-akhirah. Not going to a studio and doing footsteps and wearing PLO scarves and thinking we're going to liberate Palestine, this, that, and the other. Just happens to be, we could be in the masjid and we just, just say something light-heartedly amongst men, amongst our own selves. Jaiz, ma fi haraj. Likewise, if it happens to a wedding and only women, it's segregated, there's no one there, and they play the daf, it's for women. The Prophet said, this is for the women. Leave them alone, isn't it? Leave them alone to enjoy themselves. They like these things. So how can a man say, I like these things? So leave the women, they are totally segregated and they're doing these actions, then let them do it. Provided there's no music, there's no fear of fitna, etc. And, just allowed. But as for us men, we don't need to really enter into such such practices and think this is a form of alleviation or contentment of the heart. Wallahu a'lam. Go ahead, Sheikh.
What is mujaddid and what is the criteria for mujaddid?
Hey, mujaddid, you find that in certain hadith, the end of each year, there will come a mujaddid who will revive this ummah. So here, ulama mentioned that al-mujaddid will be one who gives a great service to Islam, whether it be in the science of hadith or tafsir or giving da'wah. As for them, you know what their mujaddid means, isn't it? Coming and making, a new recipe of biryani or halwa. You read some of their books that you find it mentions on their books that on my grave, and you find one of them he wrote and make sure you bring any biryani cooked like this, and you bring roast chicken, and you bring laddu, and you bring mitai, you bring this on my grave. You're a dead man. Why do you want these things in your grave for? Who does that food go to? And that's you find out one of the sheikhs that he, like I said, we all know they love food, mashallah, don't we all, huh? So you find that one of the sheikhs that the murid went to wake him up in the morning, and so the sheikh got angry and said, why are you waking me up in the morning for? The sheikh, it's time for Fajr in the morning. He said, don't ever disturb me again. I was praying my Fajr in Medina. I was busy praying my Fajr in Medina, you came and you disturbed me. And I have to offer my prayer here. So when the murid told his wife this, that this is my sheikh, look at mashallah, he's praying in Medina, mashallah, every day in the morning. So the wife said, okay, she's very intelligent. She said, call your sheikh for dinner. Let's call your sheikh for dinner, give him some good dinner, mashallah, good sheikh and you're a good murid. She cooked dinner for all of them and brought the food out. So the sheikh is looking at everyone's plate, breast piece, chicken piece, thigh piece, look at mashallah, he's saying to his people, look at my murid, look at his family, may Allah bless them, how much khidmah they do, all his food, all his preparation. Then comes his food. So he's already dying, hungry, waiting for his food. So his food comes with a covering on top of it. So he goes, mashallah, subhanallah, look at my murid. Look at the food, look at the preparation, even hidden, covering up this presentation. So the food comes in front of him, he removes the cloth and he only sees rice there. He goes, what's this? What kind of respect is everyone's got a chicken piece, a leg piece, this piece? You give me plain rice? Why puts her head out from the window, from the kitchen and says, listen, Sheikh, in the morning you was praying Fajr inside Medina, just move the rice, can't you see the chickens underneath there? There's no more questions, but we'll take 1 or 2 more questions. Right about that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I've just read in a book, but I just want to know, like our prophets say, you have people who are so destructive, like magic and that.
That's right.
I just want to know what's omen mean.
Omen.
Omen, yeah.
Yeah, you find that omen, is like you find a good luck, that could happen. That sometimes there's some good luck that have been allowed. Maybe good luck could be the saying of certain words or blessing the individual. As for bad omens that we find, the people may believe in, like a black cat coming in front of you, or the spilling of salt, or walking underneath a ladder or an umbrella, and these type of omens, we stay away from them, inshallah.
Why do most Sufis refer to Abdul Qadir Jilani and give him the label as Allah's?
You find that Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, you read his books, are nothing but tawheed. But because obviously he became a great reviver, likewise many of these ulama, you find they were famous ulama. So people begin to make a business out of their works and the things that they've done and the journeys that they made. So they begin to exploit them. So thus they begin to give certain titles and they begin to invent certain any false stories as well. So Abdul Qadir Jilani, you may have seen that famous photo of man in green clothing on the end of a boat, and you find that a baby is coming out the ocean because one day the baby fell inside there and he said to the ocean, bring out the baby, and the baby came out. Wallah alam, obviously we know that this is nothing but incorrect. But Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, he was a great sheikh. If you read his books of Tawheed, in his writing, you'll be very surprised. But obviously, as we said, they try to extract what they want to do and try to, pretend that these people are great saints, etc. Likewise, many of the graves and shrines even today, they were famous scholars. They were famous individuals who travelled, and because they travelled, left their land, exerted their efforts. So these people, they like to come along and try to exploit that and say, as Ahlul Sunnah, visiting the graves is not allowed. In this manner that people have this habitual practice. I've been to graves and I've heard people asking the dead person in the grave. Asking the dead person in the grave. What is that? That's clear shirk. And that's what a mass is about. We say that why are our countries in a bad state? That's the reality. In our country, every 100 yards you have to do what? Chuck a rupee, isn't it? To get by the grave for safety. And some of the graves are what? Some of the graves, there's one grave you find a man who's travelling and his friend died. And he began to cry. The people come together and they said, why are you crying? He said, my friend used to help me on my journey, take my luggage, used to be a good traveller, we used to be sharing time together. People began crying as well. People began crying on that grave that he made, and then he went off. So he went off somewhere, he came back the following year, went past that same grave, saw a great big mausoleum, and he went by, then he asked the people, who is this grave for? Regarding. He said, don't you know this man, he used to help so many people, carry their luggage, take them here, take care of them. He goes, you fools, you donkeys, that's my donkey that died there. Have you ever seen a 70-foot grave? Can you imagine a 70-foot grave? 70-foot grave in Multan. So that's what people, we don't deny the essence of the people, the good people. That's not what we're denying. We are denying the exploitation that's taking place at the moment is what we are rejecting. Even today, Lahore, you know what they wash the grave with every year? With milk. Hindu rituals. You go inside there today, go inside there today. If a bird goes to the right, it's good luck, goes to the left, it's bad luck. That's what, like I said, if I want to go expose it, one day I feel like going back and recording everything and showing people this is what they believe, so this is what they believe in. I had times involved with individuals that are very close involved with them in this movement, and they used to narrate to me everything. Narrate what was going on. I used to say to them, you're going to be the peer when you come back here. Look at the state. You don't even get up for Fajr, listen to Bollywood all night long. Oh, Sheikh, don't worry about it. Because those saints are finished. Some of them coming out in the morning in a state of intoxication, blowing on the bread and just giving it to the people. It's all controlled. That spirituality, most of them is finished now. It's that real level of spirituality. And as we mentioned, if it goes against the Sharia, then whatever the names may be. Take this final question, inshallah.
The terminology used now is called commercialized. Everything is commercialized.
That's right.
Religion has become commercialized. Just like the world, everything else is.
That's right.
Unfortunately, there's two sides to it now. The true people, the minority, then the majority who are commercialized as being to make money. That's what it is.
That's right. Okay, we all know that. I'm sure that many of us can tell the person's choice what these people exploit. The people's money, give me £10,000 and get you a place in paradise. Open statements in the masjid been given. Open statement, give me £10,000, I'll get you a place in paradise. Audacity to say that. Look, we're all intelligent individuals. In our work, in our career, we weigh up everything, don't we? But when it comes to Islam, deaf, dumb and blind in front of me become whatever the Sheikh says. He said it finished. I know people that a warrant has been placed on their head. A death tab has been put on their head. That the Sheikh has said, we want him dead. And in one country, a person went out and they killed him. And when he was arrested by the police, and the police said to him, don't you know it's haram to kill another Muslim? Of course I know it's haram to kill another Muslim. So why do you kill him then? Because my Sheikh said, if I kill him, I go to paradise. So I killed him, and I'll take any punishment you give me today. So we debate them with evidences, but obviously they become emotional, then they begin to place tags on people's heads. Because why? Their business, their empire is at stake. We're not here to take anyone's business and anybody's empire. We're here that you worship who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Finished. End of story. That's what the role for Muslims is, wherever they go, to tell people to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's for the exploitation, and we're all fully aware of the exploitation that begins to take place. They take the final question. I was told that someone heard you on YouTube saying that plucking eyebrows is okay. That's totally incorrect. I've never ever said that in my life. Rather, it must be the opposite. The verse inside Surah Al-Hashr, the 59th chapter of Quran, verse number 7, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever the messenger tells you to take it. whatever it tells you to take, abstain from it. Read the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, and then you find clearly Surah Al-Hashr, the 59th chapter, verse number 7. A woman by the name of Yaqub came to Abdullah bin Mas'ud and said that you have cursed those women who pluck their eyebrows and place gaps inside their teeth and tattoo their bodies. You have cursed them. He said, go and read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll find it inside there. She said, I read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I cannot find it. He said, if you read this verse, indeed you will find it. Whatever the messenger tells you to take it. Whatever it tells you to abstain from it. She said, indeed I find your family doing it. He said, go and see if my family does it. If my family do it, then I will divorce my family. She came back and said, indeed your family, and he doesn't do this action. So I've never ever said it is allowed for a person to pluck their eyebrows. The only thing that ulama have allowed, that maybe if a person is suffering inside their marriage, it may be something that becomes something very, very, very specific. As for some, in general, it is not allowed for a woman to pluck their eyebrows. And finally, we know that mashallah brothers have invited us previously before on this occasion as well. You can see the mashallah masjid and da'wah and his work is doing. So they've encouraged all of us to contribute towards the running and the welfare of this masjid, and inshallah, I don't know if there's a bucket or standing orders or something that we're going through. Contribute this to your local masjid to help you spread the da'wah, inshallah. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Who is the best one who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and does righteous actions. And that is the call of what all of us Muslims should be. Like I said, our words we mentioned tonight, we should not take them and go and exploit these individuals and try to harm them. We should try to be sincere in our lives, should try to advise them that what you believe in and what your actions are incorrect. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen the iman of the people inside the masjid, the various imams that we have, and the brothers, and their contribution, their efforts in putting these good works together, that all of us may benefit and prosper from these blessings inside this dunya and inside the akhirah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولجميع المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.